everyone. Welcome to the Catching Up with COPE podcast. COPE is the Coalition of Parents in Esports, a 501c3 nonprofit organization that provides programs and scholarships to empower youth, parents, and educators to utilize gaming to build confidence, community, curiosity, and careers. I'm your host, Friday, and we have a very special episode for you today, so keep watching. Today, I am here with Sari Kitelyn, the Director of Esports and Project Development at Full Sail University, also a founder of Esports and Coffee, which is a streaming show and community that uplifts and amplifies marginalized voices. And also, Sari, you're on the board of directors. You're the chair of the board of directors for NACE. That is amazing, and I want to get into that. But thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course, thank you so much for having me. Big fan of COPE for a real long time and everything that everybody does. So I'm excited to be here today and chat.
Yay, thank you. So I kind of want to kick it off talking about Collegiate Esports. So if I'm not correct, you worked previously at Full Sail before being the Director of Esports.
Correct. I've been at Full Sail almost 18 years now. It'll be 18 years this October. And I started at Full Sail essentially in the project management realm. That's where my work background kind of was coming from. And I was brought in to, one, develop the internal creative department. So the department that develops all marketing, advertising, creativity, branding, signage, environmental stuff that's all around campus. And my role really was to develop the organization's new brand initiatives, extensions, affiliations. I would always describe it as if there was something that administration or, executive leadership really wanted to accomplish, but they didn't have any strategy or direction or resources or anything of the sort, it would come to me to figure it out. And so it's get to work. And the way I would work in pure Capricorn format is I would dive in and learn everything there was to learn about whatever the thing is that I was working on. So if it was developing partnerships with WWE, I'm going to become the biggest WWE knowledge source that the world has ever seen. And we're going to kind of work through that avenue. So I would dive in, learn everything there was to learn, figure out what we needed to do to sort of run this, from a standpoint within the campus, and I would hire a team, build infrastructure, and let them kind of go and run whatever the new initiative was that we built. And then starting in about 2015, that project was esports. We had a bunch of grads that already had gone and started working in this space, particularly from like our show production and touring degree programs. We had seen a lot of the uptick in that avenue. And then we had seen our student body all around campus really just kind of getting together. There's these like hacked together LAN systems in the lobbies of buildings on campus where they're already playing competitively against other schools on their own.
Yeah.
And so in that world, we just kind of went to get started. And as we went to get started, learning and realizing quickly that there wasn't a lot to learn about collegiate esports or esports in general in 2015. It was still being developed. And as I'm learning that and kind of going through to build it up, the idea and the opportunity to work in a space that's being developed and have that level of impact on an industry was so exciting that I stayed. And now I work in esports.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's amazing. And I'm so glad that you and Full Sail, you were able to recognize this industry that was growing. I think that's a huge thing for a lot of schools these days is they're kind of noticing either they've fallen behind or they don't even appreciate or see what esports is. And so I think that's amazing. And then previously to working as the Director of Esports, did you play, what was your gaming history? What was esports? Like how much esports had you, kind of come from and known?
Sure. Definitely more surrounded by gaming, but unfamiliar to esports.
Okay.
So, similar upbringing, I think, to a lot of folks, especially in my generation we were the original Nintendo generation.
Yeah.
So we went through that entire scene and just going through that aspect. As far as working at Full Sail, you're surrounded by gaming in general.
Mm-hmm.
So always very casual, always been around in the gaming sphere, definitely more dialed in from like the game design and development perspective than from necessarily the gameplay perspective.
Yeah.
Played a lot of kid, played a lot, just kind of growing up, then really sort of, I guess, ingrained in the gaming space from a professional perspective. But the esports world was new to me. Branching out to esports specifically from gaming was definitely new.
Yeah, no, for sure. Kind of bouncing off something that you had previously said, that, esports is growing and, it's rapidly changing, like at rates that we can't even like keep up with. You had spoken a bit to, like creating a space for esports at Full Sail. What is the curriculum like, and how do you combat the constant changes of the industry and keep up with that?
Sure. It's actually interesting. We waited quite a few years after launching esports to develop curriculum, which is almost a little bit backwards from the Full Sail perspective, because Full Sail is very industry in tune for the things that we teach. It's a unique university. It's fascinating, but all of the degree programs at Full Sail relate to entertainment, media, arts, and technology. So we do not have traditional degree programs. Show production and touring, for example, like I mentioned earlier, is one of our longest running degree programs. And these are the folks that are learning how to build stages and build lighting rigs and set everything up and get into that kind of world. Our business degrees we have an entertainment business degree, a music business degree, and a game business and esports degree. So we're very niche. And the thing that I find so fascinating about Full Sail is most of the kids that come to Full Sail know exactly what they want to do when they walk in the door. I could have never gone to school here. I changed my major 150 times from everything that there was to possibly change.
So many options.
And so like the cool thing about it is they come in, they know what they want to do, and they're hyper focused in wanting to do it. And because the degrees are so specific to the industry and so kind of niche and dialed in within the industry, the curriculum structure at Full Sail is different. So we operate on an accelerated curriculum, which means that each class in your program is 1 month long, and you go to that class 40 hours a week, every week for the month. And the way that I think about it, how I kind of relate to it, I'm also a mom, and so this is the easiest way for me to kind of make the connection, is when you have a kid, especially in Florida, and everyone in Florida, you have to do swimming lessons for your kid. It's like kind of a thing. If it's not a requirement, it should be.
Yeah, part of that culture.
It happens. There's pools everywhere. So when you start swimming lessons with your kid, you don't go once a week. You don't bring your kid once a week to a swimming pool to teach them to swim, because they forget everything that they've learned between that time and then the next week. And then you bring them in and they spend the first half an hour of the next week trying to remember everything that they've done, get reacclimated to the pool and figuring it out. You go every day for a week. You do that for 2 weeks with your, infant or baby, and that's how they learn. They grasp it, they understand, they continue. And that's the easiest way for me to understand the Full Sail side of the curriculum, is that so many of our things are gear focused or gear heavy, or they're learning skills while they're developing throughout their curriculum. And so if there was, let's say we've got, obviously spaces on campus. So it's a console. Let's use a console as an example. It's a state-of-the-art console that you're going to learn from. If you've got a class of 150 people and this console you get to class twice a week in front of this console, the class is going to end and you're going to have 14 minutes of time spent on that console, and you're not going to really totally know how to use it. You'll understand how it works, but you won't have experience using it. And so for degrees at Full Sail, by having classes go for a month long, we keep the cohorts very small. So you're not going to be in a class with 150 people. You're going to be in a class with maybe 10 to 15 people. And instead of having once or twice a week that you use that console, you go every day.
Yeah.
And so at the end of every week, 100% of people in that class have sat down and used that console in that 4-hour class period, that by the time that class ends, not only do you understand how it works, but you could turn around tomorrow, do an event at a convention center running that console, and you will know exactly how to do it because you've done it. And it's interesting, it's different, it's unique, and it's fascinating, but it's super cool, and it makes a ton of sense for what they teach. Because of that, each class being a month long, we go in a bar chart format. So every class is in order, in a very particular order, because the skills are kind of building upon each other. And so for things like our esports business degree program, for example, if something changes in the industry today, the class starts again in 2 weeks. And so they have the ability to update curriculum for the class that starts July 1st to continue on all of the updates and the changes and the things that have happened. And so even though the business degrees are not necessarily as gear focused, which is what our curriculum structure has really been built upon, that curriculum structure is so beneficial to these business degrees, especially when they're in niche industries, because you can kind of ebb and flow as things change, and go from that side. The other thing that I always find super cool is that Full Sail also has lifetime auditing privileges for anyone that graduates from a degree. So say you came and took a degree program and there was this one console and that's what you learned on, and you go into the industry and you're working and you're running events, then all of a sudden you lose your job and you get laid off and you need to find another job. Well, since you went to school, that console has been upgraded 400 times and now there's a totally different version of it. You can come back, audit that class, relearn the new version of that console so that you can then go back in and be prepared and go back into that space to be able to do it. So that's always really cool too.
That's amazing. That's incredible. Like, you're really setting up like students and future industry goers for the success and potential to be able to keep up with the industry and stay in it and stay curious and learning and everything on those lines. That's amazing. I've not heard of another program like that. And as someone who went to school, I originally went to school for musical theater, and then I transitioned to the business of creative enterprises to kind of focus on esports and gaming. But my entire scope was like, I went to school knowing what I was going to do. And it's like you had, previously talked about how students at Full Sail like go in knowing what they're going to do, and to offer a wide variety of careers and fields and programs that students can go into for esports specifically. Before there was esports, did you find that students were applying what they were learning to like any projects related to esports?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question. The whole reason that we developed the program the way that we did is we have an entertainment business degree program. And it kind of it focuses on the business of the entertainment industry at large, and just the nuances and niches, licensing and just conversations that are very specific to that space. And at one point, what we had found is about 30% of the capstone projects that were coming through that program were gaming and esports related.
Wow.
And so that's when we realized that if we're going to offer esports curriculum, it should be on the business side, and we should tap into what entertainment business is kind of teaching. We pulled a little bit from sports marketing and a little bit from like the game industry to put something together. But that's how we got here, that's what we started to see from the students that were going through it.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You really catered to what the students were looking for and sort of asking for without them asking directly, which I think is awesome. And, to have administration and faculty be able to recognize, what the students are passionate about and, apply that for them, I think is incredible. You had talked about, being able to apply these skills that they're learning and set students up for the industry. So the Orlando Health Fortress is the esports arena for Full Sail Armada, correct? So what does having that space mean for students, mean for you and the esports overall at Full Sail?
Sure. So it's interesting because the Fortress is first and foremost a classroom for quite a few of our degree programs. Our show production and touring students learn in that space. We actually have 2 venues on campus, 2 large scale venues on campus, and a bunch of smaller spaces like a coffee shop kind of feeling space, and then like more of a presentation and auditorium related space. Those students are learning how to activate events in all of those spaces. So having that on campus is awesome because when those students are graduating with their degree in show production and touring, they're not going with the, I know how to plan events in these spaces. It's I have planned events in these spaces. And the cool thing about that perspective and what I love so much about how Full Sail has structured our venues is that we don't generate revenue off of the use of our fortress. So like we have clients that'll come in and want to do events. And what we do is that we'll partner with specific clients and make sure that it is kind of conducive to that educational system. So an example is Red Bull has brought quite a few events in to us. And what they end up doing is they'll bring an entire, front of house crew and an entire tech crew. And then our top performing students will be their number two for each of those positions. So a student will graduate saying, I worked Red Bull Conquest as the second AD for this event on this day under this person. And having that opportunity, I think, is tremendous. And it allows us to, not being required to generate revenue, allows us to not have to have inventory requirements. So we can say, oh, well, we've done 4 Smash events so far this year. We're going to stand down from this request because Smash has a specific nuance to it, but we've got a Call of Duty event that's coming in that's PC based and they're going to have a different nuance. And so we want to give them a different level of experience so that they can do an assortment of different types of events. So that's super cool. And then like as part of the game business and esports degree program, their final project is putting on their esports event that they've been working on as their project. So like each class will come in, they have to put on the event. The course directors, the teachers, the educators are their audience, are their players, are their people. So they have to know everything, like the ins and outs of what it looks like, what the broadcast looks like, what the graphics look like. They'll work hand in hand with students from graphic design degree programs to get graphics for the venue. They'll work hand in hand with gaming students to showcase their games. But it allows them to really actually implement the things they're writing on paper, and show how it can kind of come to be and come to life. So between the clients that are coming in and bringing events that give opportunities for folks to work on them in real time, and folks that are learning how to create events, being able to say, okay, here's your space. What are you going to do? Everybody's at the door. How are they getting in? You didn't think about that part. How are they gonna, you didn't build in time between teams. So when the team ends and the next team begins, you have dead air. We need to figure out what's gonna happen there. And they get to learn in real time what those nuances really look like.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I think those experiences, those opportunities can be like pivotal and transformative for students. And also it feels like it's because you're still in school and you're learning, it's like a judgment-free environment, almost like one where you're encouraged to take risks. Like, look, if this doesn't work out, like at least now, like when you go out there and you are throwing an event for one of the, biggest gaming companies, like you'll remember this one thing that, and why it didn't work back at, your time in university. So I think that sort of experience and learning is so important for students. And it's so amazing that you offer that, and that students can that utilize other students from other majors. Like, that's how you get it done. Like, you don't have to go sourcing anyone else. Like, the whole team is right there. And
it's cool because it's also like by the time your turn comes for your event, you've likely worked a bunch of other people's events as well. So you're like figuring those things out. You're getting a little bit more experience. And so like they feed off of each other, which is really cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And sort of, continuing talking about, students at the university and in esports, are there any sort of like support services for the students in terms of like academic advising? Like, is there any coaching for any players or, specific things for the students who are involved with, esports, either at the competitive level or just like in general?
Sure, yeah. So we do have varsity teams and a competitive side of what we do. It's about 80 or so varsity athletes, kind of give and take. We compete across 8 different titles. But the other thing that we have from the competitive and varsity perspective is we have a varsity stream team, which I believe we might still be the only school that has established that. But essentially, because of the school that we are and who's kind of coming in, we have a lot of students that are interested in personal brand. They're developing their own kind of vibe and persona. They're streaming, they're casting, they're kind of creating their experience, what everyone's going to kind of develop from them. And we wanted to give that the same caliber that someone that would be competitive would have, because to the esports space, those things hold the same weight in our perspective. So our competitive folks have obviously the standards that they really need to fit within, GPA requirements, professionalism standards, attendance, etc. And our stream team has the same thing. So if you want to stream and be a member of the varsity stream team, you have to have streamed a certain amount of time on your own. You have to hit a certain status through your streaming that will give and show that consistency. You have to have developed your personal brand and style. You have to maintain a certain level of GPA. You have to have attendance requirements. And then in those regards, you can try out for the stream team. Those that make it get jerseys. They're on the website. They're listed as a team, just like every other competitive team is. And they stream from our channel. We free it up. I mean, most of our matches were in the evening. So we do 2 to 5 p.m. every day. And a lot of times during the summer is open. So streamers that can book a time and they have an audience that's established. They're also growing their own personal channels at the same time, and they're learning what is needed to be a content creator. So I think that is something that's really awesome and unique, because I think it expands the opportunity for folks at that competitive level. And then even bigger than that is our like community-based things. So while we have about 80 on the competitive side, we've got over 4,000 in the club side. We're a gaming school. That's what we have. We've got 6 different degrees in the gaming industry. So we have a ton of different gamers around campus. It's just something that's always existed. So the club and community side of what we do is far bigger than the competitive side of what we do. And that includes multiple events per month, gatherings, people having the opportunity to host their own tournaments for specific games that they want within the student body, having the ability to kind of gather in the fortress or other spaces on campus and activate accordingly. But just in general, kind of spreading that throughout. And then we have folks that support events that we have. A lot of times those cross over, but we'll have folks that are really interested in working in the space that will kind of join in the regular volunteers for events. And then we have a degree program, a sportscasting degree program that's run through Dan Patrick, who's a established sportscaster, the Dan Patrick School of Sportscasting. And about a third of those students are coming with an interest in shoutcasting for gaming as opposed to traditional sports. So we work hand in hand with those students as well, and they'll cast not only our matches, but events that come through from that aspect as well.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Especially, I mean, a big part of the space right now when we're thinking about, collegiate potentially being like the stepping stone to like pro and things like that. I think a lot of the times, a lot of people have various different backgrounds getting into esports, but now we're really starting to see a shift where you can really focus like specifically on something like shoutcasting and like actually being able to hone in on that and then going into the industry for it instead of like, having some other degree and then just getting into it after, which is still totally great, which is, we love all different backgrounds here, but I do think that it's very like amazing that there are those opportunities still. And you had mentioned community. And so that is a huge, there's no debate around community these days with the Collegiate Esports, but a lot of programs clubs have to sort of restructure to really focus on community instead of being super competitive. And that's why I want to like ask you, what community and building community within collegiate esports in general means to you, just because I think it's just like the heart, basically. At least I consider it that.
Sure. I agree. I think, the big thing to know is that 10 years ago, folks that were really working in esports or getting jobs in esports were people that loved it. They loved video games, and they knew everything about the game, and they knew everything about competitive, and that's how they were going to get themselves into this situation. We are long past those moments. And so loving esports and loving gaming is so wonderful, but that is not enough to get you a job in this space. You need to be able to connect your degree and what it is that you're doing with this space to be able to understand how you can benefit, how the space can benefit from you and what you can kind of bring to that situation. And so once you start bringing those together is when you carve out the area of gaming still just being fun. So I think that when being the most knowledgeable about a game was kind of enough to get your foot in the door, the lines blurred a lot. And you would start to find folks that like, yes, this was the only thing I played and now I never want to play it again. Because now all of a sudden it's everything that I'm doing and I blurred the lines a little bit too much.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that my hobbies are still my hobbies and my, the gaming that I love, I still love it. And I think for us, having that focus on community is really that. It's continuing to tap into the love that people have for games so that as they're exploring college, their degree, their studies, making friends, moving to a new city, all the things that they're doing, they have their space that they can kind of come back to that brings them comfort and that brings them stability. Because Full Sail is such a different place, we don't see a lot of things that you might see at a traditional university where, oh, well, we're in Orlando. I just graduated from high school. Most of my friends are going to UCF. I'm going to UCF. It's down the street. That's where Orlando goes. You go to one of 3 schools, right? That are kind of in this area. And are there a handful of people that are going further out? Yes, but for the most part, you're going to walk into your new school and you're going to know a bunch of people that you went to high school with or whatnot. We don't have that. We're often getting the one person that was a little bit different from their high school, and they come to our campus to find the other one person that was a little bit different from their high school. And so we do have a lot of folks that are coming in fresh, without their community, without their connection, and we view it as gaming is such a unifier that it's a way to bring everybody together and bring them comfort, whether that comfort is just I'm introverted and I just need to be online and I want a place that I can be able to go, or whether that comfort is I just am here to meet friends and I'm coming to this event and I want to meet friends. So we treat things that are online and things that are in person with the exact same weight because people are comfortable in different ways. People are getting their education in different ways, and it's the aspect of gaming to us from the community perspective is where you find yourself. We want gaming to still be a form of entertainment, and we want gaming to still be a unifier where you're working together, you're learning a lot about other people. You have a place you can escape from when class was really hard. You have a network of people where you can say, oh my God, have you ever had this teacher? Why are they so hard? And a way that they can connect. And you hear the term networking all the time. How important networking is. Networking. You start hearing that when you're in school. Networking is intimidating. It's scary, it's weird, and it's intimidating. And what people don't realize is they are networking through gaming. And so if you're more comfortable doing that with a controller in your hand, at least you're starting to develop those skills of what networking means than having to put on a suit and walk into a room and just literally approach somebody. And so I think it really provides that aspect of giving them some sense of grounding, starting them understanding where they can find their network in their comfort zone, and giving them a place where they can still enjoy the aspect of games while they're developing who they're going to be as a person. And that's, to me, I think what the value of community is, especially in our spaces.
No, I think that's beautiful. And everything you said about networking, like specifically, is so, oh, that hits home. And because I love talking to people, but there is that initial idea of like networking being this like super professional thing that you have to, know exactly what you're going to say, pitch yourself, like elevator pitch time, like that starts to freak me out. And then that can, sort of remove you from a space because you get, you're afraid of that sort of, those, I guess what networking like means to people and that sort of thing. So sort of changing that and into recognizing that it's like, no, you're actually doing that all the time through something that you love. You just might not realize it. Like, let's redefine how we see networking and that sort of thing.
Take baby steps into the pool. You don't need to dive right in. Let's just start getting people and meeting new people.
Exactly. Starting small. And that actually kind of made me think about, what Esports and Coffee really stands for. And that's why I wanted to know how you got involved, and like if you can speak to the importance of creating a space and being able to amplify marginalized voices and creating that comfortability, that place that people can keep coming back to.
Sure. So we started Esports and Coffee almost 2 years ago, I believe now at this point. We started working on it definitely over 2 years ago. And it was just 3 friends and I that all worked at different collegiate esports roles at the time, of honestly getting tired of hearing the same voices over and over again. Got tired of Twitter and everything that we were reading on Twitter, got tired of the hot takes, got tired of the negativity, got tired of the one little thing would happen and everybody would pounce on it, and all of a sudden that fire is the biggest deal in the entire world and you can't look at or think or talk about anything else. And felt like there was not, what we were seeing was not indicative of how we felt working in this space. And we just wanted to change it. And quite honestly, our initial thought was, can we drown out the negativity by amplifying positive voices and good things that are happening? And that was the intention on how we started. And that really sort of molded even before we kicked off, of just being able to do better. The way you talk to that person is not okay. That word that you used is not okay. The phrasing that's being used and the behavior that's being done is not okay. No, it's not just gaming. It's not okay. And we're going to change it. And we wanted to do it in a way that was not, you can't be toxic, thanks, bye. But in a, here are some tips and tricks on when you're feeling like someone is being toxic towards you, how you can handle it. Here's some situations that have really happened. We wanted conducive conversations that helped people find themselves, grow themselves, work through themselves. Professional development is an interesting, I guess, conversation, because a lot of times professional development requires budget. There's conferences you could go to if you have money. There's people you can hire if you have money. Sometimes the company that you work for might offer it, but that's always in the best interest of the company, not necessarily in the best interest of yourself. And so being able to provide a space where no one had to pay anything and can learn from like-minded people, can find themselves, can grow themselves, can talk through their struggles, can work through things, can review resumes and portfolio, can hype people up before an interview, that felt important to us. And so that's how we sort of started. And the way that it has evolved is beyond anything I think that we could have ever dreamed of it being. We have a huge community now, a couple hundred folks. We stream twice a month. We have a very active Discord. We do a couple of just meetups and conversations. We've had people find jobs. We've had people start dating. We've had people find friendships. We've had people find gaming squads. We've had everything that there is just through that. We don't really have we're not trying to grow to be the biggest thing that there ever was. We're not trying to get ourselves in a situation. We just want to help people and provide kind of that level of an outlet. To the point where at the Gamehers Awards this year, I was sitting there, and I had gone, we had full set a couple of things, and so I was going and I was going to represent. And the Esports and Coffee was a finalist for the award for the best DEI initiative. And we filmed our little acceptance thing, but we were excited to even be considered, and didn't expect it. And then I'm sitting there and they said our name and I was sort of frozen and everyone is looking at me and I was like, oh my, is that us? I don't even know what I shocked. And we were all just like, what just happened? How did that happen? How do people know what we're doing and know enough to kind of give us that level of recognition? Was crazy. It was amazing. And it was everything that we want to be. We are not raising money. There are no dues. We're not spending money. We're not really doing much of anything except that providing people with the space where they can become the best version of themselves, find like-minded people, and where we can improve the industry together from the inside. And that's we're doing.
Absolutely. And first of all, congratulations. It's amazing. I was actually at the Gamehers Awards as well, which I think is so crazy. So, like, there's people there who I'm finding that like were there that I didn't even cross paths with, and then I'm like, wait, we were both in the same space, which I think is crazy. But That is wonderful. And I love that you specifically said that you're not trying to be the biggest. You're not trying to get everybody in the world to, take part. You're really just trying to be there as a resource for the people who need it, and that, and you find the people that need it, and, the people that need it come to you. Like, that sort of, I think, mentality is really important, because a lot of the times people get distracted with this idea that, like, they have to be like the top name or the, whatever. But if you're staying true to what, you're building and, what you're providing, then that's really what matters, and so I love to hear that. And I think that's incredible and speaks a lot to your work, and it's very prevalent. Like I can see it, like we can see it. And I think that's amazing. So, and again, congratulations. Like, that's just incredible. And so I kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit as well. NACE, National Association of Collegiate Esports. Can you tell us a bit more about, like, the mission of NACE, and then, like, how you got involved?
Sure. So NACE is a member organization focused on essentially the collegiate esports industry at the varsity level. And so we joined NACE, Full Sail joined NACE as a member in, I think, 2017, as a place of we don't even know where to start. At the time where we don't have a department of athletics. We're never going to have any other athletic on our campus. I don't have a handbook. I don't have policies. I don't know anything about what being a varsity team looks like. And I needed help and resources. And that's where I started. And it's really awesome, and it's grown over time. And it's really great because it's member driven. The conversation shifts and changes as the industry does, with voices from members. So, like, the last year and a half or so has really been a lot of focus on these D1 schools and what they're going to need to know in order to participate, because while there's some that have been around for quite some time, in the general capacity at the conference level, they're kind of just starting to get involved now. So what do we need to do in order to kind of help that, tweak that? What do we need to know now that these name, image, and likeness deals are starting to happen at the traditional sports level? What do we need to know, and how do we need to be able to adopt? And it's a nonprofit organization that facilitates competition with all organization, infrastructure, and resources driven by members. And it's been wonderful. It is one of many organizations in this space that kind of all do things a little bit different, with them being really the prime member-driven organization. And I've very much always been a behind-the-scenes person. I don't like networking. I love ducking out of networking sessions when they're starting to get uncomfortable. I like to do the work. Mm-hmm. I'm a work person. I just like to sit down and do it. And one of my coworkers, Bennett, he was always our forward-facing person until kind of a couple years ago. He said, you really have to start getting more comfortable with this. You complain to me the most of anybody that there are no women in this space. And how are you going to get more women in this space if all they see is me? And he brought a good point. And so I went to a lot of therapy, and I learned how to talk in front of people, and I tried to find confidence. And so in NACE, one of the people that works for NACE, who's now a really good friend of mine, AJ, and one of the other founders of Esports and Coffee, said, "Hi, I'd like to put you on a panel." I said, "Oh, I don't do panels. Bennett will be a panel. He will happily do this for you." She goes, "I've already had Bennett. I'd like to have you. Why don't you?" And I said, "I'm just not I'm not good with this kind of stuff. I don't speak in front of people." She's like, "Well, you're not going to get good at it if you don't start. So we're going to book you, and you're going to be the one that does this." And I said, "Okay." And I think that was the first panel I ever did. And I feel like now I'm a professional panelist, so I'm going to blame AJ for that. But, and that's how the whole thing started. So that started a little bit, and I got a little bit more comfortable, and I started to meet people, but that was years after I had already joined NACE. And then back in 2022, I decided to run for the board. I was like, you know what? I'm getting a little bit more comfortable. I'd like to be a part of the conversation. Instead of just hearing how the conversation goes, I'm going to see if I can be a part of the conversation. So I ran for the board and I was elected. And then I spent a year on the board. And then it was time for the current chair, Joey Griesiak, was leaving, and it was time to elect a new chairman. And I was elected by the board. This was also my first time being on a board and my first time being the chairperson of a board. And so I'm learning a lot of things as I go, but it's wonderful. I love it so much because the board is so unbelievably diverse when it comes to voices and perspectives. We have people from community colleges, D1 institutions with over 50,000 students, private religious schools with under 2,000 students. We have schools within Canada. We have schools in the US. We have schools with primarily online students. We have schools that don't have any online students. We have schools with 7 different campuses that all play under one. And we have schools that have traveled to South Korea to play in esports, collegiate esports. We have highly competitive programs, barely competitive programs, and everything in between. And so as a group, it's really awesome to feel like we really represent that industry as a whole, because we're kind of coming from a bunch of different directions, particularly, and caveat is from the varsity side. So like NACE does not really represent the club program. So, and for us at Full Sail, we have both club and varsity. So it's an interesting kind of caveat between the two, but the development of infrastructure with a group of people that are all coming from different perspectives is awesome. Even like we have someone that was a player in high school, started esports in high school, moved to college, started his esports program at his college, then graduated and started an esports program at 3 different universities before moving on to a major D1 school and running that. He's got a huge perspective. Then we have someone who came from the pro scene that managed a pro team in esports, left the pro scene to start a program in collegiate that went on to be the most competitively successful collegiate program that there has been. And we have folks that have one team and it's Madden and that's what they play. And it's fascinating, I think, to have it all kind of together.
No, I like 1,000%. And I think, I usually like to say that like learning other people's perspectives is like just one of the best things that you can do. I mean, that's how we grow. That's how we understand. That's how, and so I think that, you're telling me that you have all these different perspectives and people on the board that come from so many different backgrounds. I think that's incredible. And also congratulations that, you were elected for as the chair. Like, that's amazing. That's incredible. And I also think like I know who you're talking about as you're saying these people, just because like being in the space, I'm like, I've heard about these, I've heard these backgrounds.
Or whatever. Yeah, everybody knows.
Yeah, no, literally, I think it's great. But that's wonderful. And, I think at least from like a student perspective, I really can see some of the changes that NACE is making in a long-term sustainable way. And so I really respect everything that, you are all doing, even though I am in a club program right now, but I still think it's very important to kind of have structure for those D1 programs and be able to kind of really solidify what the collegiate is and can look like. And so I kind of want to switch gears a tiny bit, a little bit just about you and I think, your life and your work. Has there been any like piece of advice or mentorship that has had a lasting impact on you or your career?
Yes, I mean, quite a bit. I am of a different generation than most folks in this space. I am quite a bit older than pretty much anyone that I have met that works in this space. And so I come from a different time, especially as a woman. I thankfully was raised by probably the original feminist. And my mom has always kind of instilled this thing in us, both me and my sister, that woman, man, whatever, you can do anything. There's nothing that kind of holds you back. And that's awesome. But I have definitely also grown up in a period of time where you have to be really sweet. You have to use your looks and your femininity to get yourself into the room, to get yourself to that conversation. You have to play down some of the things that you do know so that you make other people feel more comfortable. That's the world that I came from. And that is not the world that I want anyone else to ever be in. And so for me, I feel like it's seeing that and understanding that, being called out for it quite a few times, especially maybe in my late 20s, early 30s, was helpful for me to understand that if I want something to change, I need to be a part of that change. And sitting on the sidelines or being in the background is not going to allow that to happen. And so I have slowly and surely over time gotten more comfortable with being that leader for marginalized voices everywhere that are kind of looking towards me. I am what I consider to be the lowest common denominator form of diversity. I'm a cisgender, middle-aged white woman. I am a very easily instituted diversity checkbox for a lot of folks. They can put me on a panel and they've got their lady and everything is good. And it took me quite a few years to realize that. And I have represented quite a few organizations and panels and things that I wish I wouldn't have, because I didn't realize I was being used for that context. And so the time that I was able to pivot and say, well, what are you doing to support women in your space? I've looked into your organization and I've noticed that these following things have been written. Have there been changes? Can I see your policies? Can I see your org structure? How many people at your C level are of color, and how many people of your bottom line? I understand you're saying that you're very diverse. Where does that diversity happen within the context? And that has been the hardest thing for me to learn, and the thing that I am the most proud of that I've learned, because I've put myself in uncomfortable situations a lot with it, and I previously would have shied away from uncomfortable situations. And so I think the biggest thing for me and the biggest learning lessons that I've had is in the areas of diversity. There are things that were common vernacular when I was growing up that I would not be caught dead saying now. And it is acknowledging that I don't have to be perfect right now, but I have to show that I am trying to get better. And I am showing that I am trying to improve, and I'm trying to ask questions. And so growth-wise, learning-wise, that's been the biggest pivot for me that I've had to take. I am going to be 45 this year. And so it took me until my 40s to find my voice. I didn't have it. And I 100% credit a very good friend of mine, another co-founder of Esports and Coffee, and one of the best people that I know. Her name's Jackie Lamb. She's the only reason I have a voice right now. She's the only person that has given me the confidence to say what I want to say and to feel what I want to feel. If you look at anything from me prior to 2020, you will not find it. It took a very long time for me to realize that I have something to say and I should refine it and I should use it. So that has been, I think, the hardest growth path for me. Jackie has been my biggest support system, and just the ability to be proud of who I am, be constantly committed to learning and to admit when I've messed up, so that other people know that they can admit when they mess up, when I've said the wrong things, when I've misgendered somebody. I want to acknowledge that I did it and that it was wrong, or else I'm not acknowledging that you can do it the right way. When I use things like, hey guys, and trying to tweak from doing that in such a minor way, I've used a lot of vernacular that I think could be ableist, and I don't want to do that. And so it's just a matter of like trying to be able to learn what that looks like. So I think that that's really the biggest piece of advice, and the biggest piece of learning is like, you're not trying to be perfect. You're trying to get better.
Yeah.
And you want to learn how to get better, and you want to you don't know how to get better unless you know where you're not, where you're wrong or where your missteps are. And so I have found my voice in that phase of getting better, in that phase of improving, in that phase of acceptance, in that phase of understanding, in that phase of understanding, quite frankly, that with the way the world works, I'm not diversity. And I should not represent myself as such. There are people that are, it's a vast, wide array of what that space looks like. And all of those people deserve a voice. And all of those people deserve to be heard. And if all I can do is open the door so those voices can be heard, that's what I want to do. But I don't want to represent voices that I can't. I instead want to provide them an opportunity to use theirs as well.
Absolutely. I like 1,000% hear you. I think that's could not have literally have said it better myself. And I think that idea of asking questions, being able to ask questions, and then addressing if like you make any mistakes, because it's the only way other people are gonna learn. If you don't fix and work on things on yourself, then other people, you're not setting any sort of example for other people. So I completely resonate and hear you on that. And so thank you for sharing that with us. And then I do want to ask just a couple more questions about just about you and your life, because I think work-life balance is so important, especially in this industry. You had said previously people like lose their love of gaming because they like make it a job. Are there any like hobbies, like this can include gaming, that or anything that you really do in your free time, or ways that you sort of like step back from the space a little bit?
I have a 10-year-old. His name is Bodhi. He's the greatest human being that I have ever known. And so a lot of our, stepping away is us and finding adventures. They are big things like going to theme parks, and they are small things like doing a blind taste test on the different flavors of Cheez-Its and seeing if we can figure out which flavor is which.
Love.
And following him around, and whatever our thing is that we're going to figure out in this moment is a really big just source of enjoyment and fun and everything of the sort. I am a huge traditional football fan. I play a lot of fantasy football.
Awesome.
I win a lot of fantasy football. Not in the Cope League, though. I did not do well in that league.
Oh no!
Did not go well. But it's always this year. But love everything about fantasy football, love everything about following the sport of football. Been very into women's basketball, but I love all traditional sports. I think it's that thing of like, I would love to be an athlete. I was not gifted with any of the ability, skills, or really just like non-clumsiness or hand-eye coordination to make that a possibility. So I just spend my life surrounded by it. And just in general is like dividing that line. So like when I have friends that like have them now, I have friends that also work in the space with me, of making the agreement of saying like, hi, this is a happy hour, not a work event. So no work talk, no esports talk. We're just here to hang out and have a good time. Okay. That's what we're here to do today. It's just sort of trying to like commit to those boundaries. It's interesting.
Boundaries are so important. I've even at like the student level, I've noticed that like a lot of the times we have to reinforce, like when we're outside of this room, this meeting, this board meeting, we can have conversations that do not revolve around esports and the things that we do like 24/7 like that. And I think that's a really healthy thing to keep in mind in this space, is how easy it is to just flow into the conversation of like, so there's this thing that happened, the other day when we were, knee deep in the work, that sort of thing. So I think it's so important that you say that. And I think I love to hear all the amazing things that you're doing with your son. I think that's so fun. And that you're really big in football and fantasy football and stuff like that. I think that's awesome. I really only recently kind of got into like more into like baseball and sports, things like that, because I think it actually like that like love for like for teams and supporting teams actually really came from like my love for like esports and following that sort of culture, which is really exciting. So I think that's awesome. And then I kind of wanted to do a couple of hot seat questions. We had chatted previously. Does pineapple belong on pizza?
100% pineapple belongs on pizza. I do have a caveat, and it might be a semi-hot take, but everyone thinks it's ham and pineapple. It's not. It's pepperoni and pineapple. The spicy of a pepperoni with a pineapple is far better than that ham component, and I highly recommend everyone trying it.
I've never heard of pepperoni with pineapple. But honestly, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Huh?
I know what I'm having for dinner tonight.
I recommend. I want to hear a full report on what you think.
I got you. I'll definitely give you the rundown. Do you eat it like, would you do cold and warm pineapple? Or is it,
Oh, yeah.
okay, both?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Both ways.
I respect it. If you were deserted on an island and can only bring three things, can only, if you're deserted on an island and can only if you're deserted on an island and can only bring three things, what do you bring?
Okay. 100% is a blanket. Anyone that knows me, I'm always cold 100% of the time. I live in the hottest place on the planet, and somehow I am still always cold. Everyone always makes fun of me for it, and I hate being cold. It's miserable. So even on this deserted island, I'm going to need a blanket because I don't want to be cold.
Blanket, number one.
So that's number one. Number two is probably a large supply of Cadbury cream eggs. They are really like my favorite treat. It's already hard enough that you can only get them once a year. I love them. I feel like them giving it to me once a year is only perpetuating how bad I want them. And if I'm on this deserted island and I have to be on a deserted island without Cadbury cream eggs, I do not know what I'm going to do.
Have them whenever you want when you're there, you know?
My island. I want it to be full of Cadbury cream eggs. And then I'm going to say, based on all of the things that I have learned, the only experience I have in a deserted island through Animal Crossing, I feel like my third item that I need to bring is an axe, and not a flimsy axe, but a real axe. Screw the flimsy axe. We're going real axe because it's going to get me my bamboo. It's going to get me my fruits and vegetables. I'm going to have wood to build things. I'm going with an axe.
I don't think you could have said anything better. I love Animal Crossing, and so the fact that you specified a real axe and not a flimsy axe is incredible. Three phenomenal answers setting you up for success on your deserted island.
I'm very excited.
This is a crazy one. If you could turn any game into an e-sport, what would it be and why? Like, you don't even have to figure out the logistics yet. Like, if you could turn any game.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. This is such a reach. This is going to be so crazy. There was this phone game. It might still exist. I have not played it in a very long time. But it's called Tiny Tower. And it's on your phone. And you build this tower, right, over time. I feel like if all of those people were other people and we were competing against building our tower, I feel like that would be super fun. And so I'm going to go with Tiny Tower.
That's so good. I loved Tiny Tower. So I think I need to play Tiny Tower after this. But I love that, and I'm ready to make the proposal for it. And then
we'll be the first competitors for Tiny Tower Esports.
Oh, you and I, right? We're ready to go. We have jerseys. We're ready. We got our team name. Like, okay. And then, are you allergic to fruit?
No.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to make sure I asked that before I asked what fruit would you be and why. If you have,
wow,
I know, kind of crazy.
Oh my God, this is the hardest question I think I've ever been asked, because there's so many ways I could go with this.
I know.
I think I want to go with grapes.
Love.
I find that grapes are pretty versatile. They're a great snack. If you ever freeze grapes, they're very refreshing. They're wonderful in a whole bunch of different things. I'm always surrounded by friends, but if I want to go off on my own, I can. You know, I got my own independence. There's so many different varieties, so I'm going to meet a whole bunch of different walks of life. I'm never going to understand the cotton candy grapes, but I'm proud that they're here and let them be a part of it. But I'm going to say grapes, I think.
I love it. I love it. You broke that down. You broke that down perfectly. That's incredible. And then favorite video game and favorite esport. It can be the same thing if it happens to be, but if you have a favorite video game, and then separate from that, like a favorite esports sort of game.
Sure. I'm going to say right now, my favorite video game is Rocket League. Only, but I'm not going to call it my favorite esport, but it's my favorite video game because it is currently the only game I can beat my son at. He has gotten better at me than everything else, and I do not like to let him win, and I think he deserves to be put in his place, and that is currently the only game that I can still put him in his place on, so I'm going to go with Rocket League as favorite video game. And even though Rocket League is an esport, it's not my favorite esport. My favorite esport is Valorant. I like what, for so many different reasons, but I think for the most reason as what it has done to our space, I think Valorant, maybe unintentionally, has brought a substantial amount of diversity into our esports space. It came at the perfect time in order to be able to do that. And I love all of the initiatives that are happening surrounding Valorant that are kind of supporting, especially for women in gaming. I think it does a ton in that avenue. And it puts a highly competitive game with women, I think, having a lot of the power in what that does. And I really like that. And I'm also excited and intrigued by its continued evolution since it's still relatively new.
I love that. No, like Valorant is the reason that I really kind of got involved with the space, and and I'm not a competitive player or anything like that. Like, that is not my wheelhouse, but it did bring me into the world of esports and, showed me that I have a place here, and which I think is so important. So I think it's awesome that you say that, and that you beat your son at Rocket League. That's, look at you go.
I do practice when he's at camp so that I can make sure I stay better than him, but I just got to make sure.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you know what? Like, that's practice. That's, that's a huge part of it. So I respect that. But those are my hot seat questions. But thank you so much for being here today, Sari. It was amazing getting to chat with you, and talk some more. Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Make sure to check out our social media using the links below, as we are always an available resource to you and have a lot of fun content coming soon. See you in the next episode.